Hello and welcome to another episode of Birth of a New Dimension. I am Aurora and I am so happy to rejoin you in creating new broadcasts for this creation, for this show, after several weeks' break. So I would like to share with you the reason for the several weeks that I took off, and also to use that as a jumping off point for today's broadcast, which is really all about channelers and channeled information. So I am a walk-in, in case you are new to this broadcast or new to my story of being Aurora. I came into this physical human body in 2001, and the circumstances that led to me walking into this body were what could be described as a death experience or a near-death experience. So I've subsequently learned that not all walk-ins, especially more recent ones who have entered the physical plane, let's say within the past 10 or 15 years, not all walk-ins have to come in through a near-death experience. And I've even found out that a lot of people who have come in more recently had very beautiful transitions. And not everyone who is a walk-in had either difficulties with their neurology or biology or having the energy of their walk-in consciousness properly installed into their physical body. My experience of walking in was highly traumatic. Yes, the body did die or have a near-death experience. The former occupant of this body, the former ego who lived in this house, was obliterated, was destroyed. And this is what death is. The ego is destroyed and the body can no longer be a container for consciousness. So both of those characteristics are accurate descriptions of what this body experienced. So I've also recorded an extensive YouTube about my experience of walking in, and it happened at the same time as events on a cosmic scale, that there was a battle between forces of good and evil, or let's say a battle of duality, that I, as a bystander, as a non-participant, found myself in the midst of this battle, and I chose to participate, and I chose to do so by creating the flying rainbow lasagna. So this portal was my contribution to the events. However, I was not necessarily a part of the, let's say, larger armies or the hierarchy that was happening. And that matters because this is all about free will. This is about no one forced me to do anything. No taskmaster said to me, you must do this. And I do not describe myself as a soldier. A soldier takes orders. And I really did not do that. I really am more accurate description would be to use the word a warrior, even though in daily waking life, physical life, I'm a non-violent person. Warrior denotes the consciousness approach of fighting according to your own beliefs and value system. So, and I fight with love. I use unconditional love as my weapon. And really in the hyperspace realm, fighting and battling is not a question of physical might. It is a question of belief system structure and creative power. So I always laugh when I look at these movies, like, Jupiter Ascending was supposed to be a really well-made movie, and when I watched it, I was just laughing because it shows, technological space races, and they have, like, petty ego issues, and they solve their differences by shooting each other with projectile weapons. And that is not what is happening at the level of hyperspace according to my perception. So first of all, yes, the movie depicted physical extraterrestrials fighting with physical guns or weapons. The extraterrestrials that I'm talking about, or what was happening on a hyperspace level. So we're talking right now about the world that is beyond the physical world. The physical world is a part of hyperspace. It's a subset of hyperspace. but hyperspace is the expanded reality that includes the physical and the non-physical or spiritual or the plane of pure energy. And on that level, very little of the fighting is done with weapons that shoot something out of it like a bullet out of a gun. Very little of the conflict has to do with the use of projectile weapons. Most of the conflict that happens in hyperspace is a fight of belief systems, or you could say a battle of belief systems. That it is about how your thoughts are structured. Literally, like if you use your house as an analogy, before a house is built, first you build the basic framework, and then all of the siding and the walls are attached to that basic framework. Well, each person, both corporeal and non-corporeal, has a belief system that is like that structural framework. And literally, the neurological impulses of your mind are arranged according to those non-physical structures in a hyperspace reality. And if you can imagine a battle of structure where one form is tested against another form to see which form has more strength and integrity. So I don't know if you ever took a science class in high school where you had to either build a parachute or something that can help drop it. You had to, basically the challenge was to drop an egg off of a height and see if you could build something that would prevent the egg from cracking. Or in another science-based challenge to create a bridge and then see how much your little bridge can hold, like a tiny bridge out of matchsticks. Well, these science analogies are very close to what happens in hyperspace. It's like the belief systems are tested against one another to see how well they perform. So, in the high school science experiment, it is how many feet up can you drop an egg without the egg cracking? And if you built a good parachute or a good little, cage for it, then the egg wouldn't break. Well, here we are talking about belief system and the structure of one's thoughts and how energy flows through the structure of those thoughts. And belief systems are then pitted against one another, and the one that performed its function the best is the one that is considered to be the victor, the winner. So in belief systems, it's like saying, is this structure stable? Will this structure stand, or will it fall down? Will it collapse under its own weight? If we subject this structure to different forces and different stresses, how will the structure react? So the battle that I was a part of between these forces of duality in the hyperspace realm, everybody was trying to say and display how strong their belief system was. And, of course, the forces of evil, and I've spoken about this before, galactic history, beings who chose to go away from source, but not according to the harmonic pattern of consciousness in the universe. It's like saying, Mom, Dad, I'm sick of this household. I'm striking out on my own. I'm leaving. I'm going out on my own. But you just happen to be like a tiny 6-year-old. You're not ready to leave the house yet. But this is what some entities did. It's known as the Luciferian Rebellion, and that is pretty much what created the duality and the evil that we know of in the universe. It was a experiment by certain consciousnesses to leave the source under their own power as opposed to under the power of love, and to have experiences in the third dimension but not in a body that is made out of love. And that is a belief system. These beings created it, and they are living it to its nth degree, to its final denouement. They are taking what they believe and they are applying it to reality, and they want to see where that's going to take them. And of course, there are other beings that have a differently shaped or structured belief system, and it is in conflict with the other belief system, and then they have a contest to see whose belief system is the strongest. And that contest is what I experienced being caught within. And so in these belief systems, I innovated and I created a new dimension or a new tunnel or a new pathway, and that pathway is a higher dimensional pathway, and the shape that it created is the shape of the flying rainbow lasagna. So again, if you're new to this broadcast and you've never seen this before, check out the banner for the UCY Birth of a New Dimension homepage. There's a big, fat, giant flying rainbow lasagna in the middle of that banner. You can also check out the feed from the Facebook page, Birth of a New Dimension, the lower left on the UCY homepage, where you can click on any of the highlighted titles and see images of my artwork that I have uploaded. And third option to see a flying rainbow lasagna, check out my website, flyingrainbowlasagna.com. There are pictures of sculptures that I've made. There's also animations of the lasagna, and there's extensive writing about the math behind the lasagna. All of this I'm bringing up in order to tell you that my experience of walking into this body was walking into a neurology that had been disrupted because there was an attack on not only the consciousness or like the psychology or consciousness or mind of the person in this body. There was also an attack on the neurology. The neurology was disrupted, and parts of the nerves of the brain were even rendered non-functional. This created a scar. If you could imagine like the way that circuit breakers, if there's too much energy going through the electric wires, circuit breakers can be tripped, but if you put lots of energy through them, that they would just melt, like just melted plastic or, bursting into flames. That is a similar analogy to what happened with the neurological quote-unquote wiring of this biological brain that I use. When it was attacked in that battle, some of these circuits were literally overpowered and almost fused, like they are no longer brain neurological circuits that function. And the epilepsy that I deal with is an artifact of that. And so I'm bringing this up in order to explain and describe, walk-ins who walk into a body. It is like getting a used vehicle, like you get a used car. And if the other person who had the vehicle before you, had a smelly dog or smoked tobacco, like your car smells like a dog or it smells like cigarettes. I came into a vehicle that had neurological disruption, and I have had to deal with that artifact since I came in 2001. I have read and heard stories about other walk-ins, and some of them, like one story I have heard, was a consciousness that came into a body that was severely overweight, like hundreds of pounds overweight and very ill as a response to that. And the walk-in transformed that body and, of course, had to deal with, all of the after effects of having been overweight and lost a lot of weight. But this is all about, it's like wonderful life lessons and examples of the plasticity of the human body, of how much it can change and adapt, and also how much the human body reflects its occupant. So, because people asked me when I was going through a health crisis a couple of months ago, basically they're like, you're a spiritual person, you're a stellar being, and you're here on Earth. How can you be having any health problems? And this is really important for me to share and describe. Because I'm in a human body does not mean that I get to escape all of the challenges that other humans face. Far from it. It's the opposite. I'm here in a human body to show by example what can be done from this viewpoint or from this position or from this vantage point. So I'm going to get into this also when we get into the physical body and being a channel or being a conduit. But basically, when I come here and I look around, I have perceived that humans feel very bad about themselves. Their egos feel very bad about themselves, and humans feel that having a body is makes them less valuable, less adept, less special than other beings who don't have a body, like an ascended master, a spirit person, or non-corporeal, extraterrestrial, or extra-dimensional. There is a very heavy program that has been laid on corporeal humanity. And it's a program, it's not truth. It is like when parents, if you have curly hair and when you grow up, your mother always tells you, oh, you'd be so pretty if only you didn't have curly hair. Like, that's not true. We know curly hair is beautiful, but mother laid a trip on you, making you feel that you aren't pretty because of your curly hair. Well, guess what, humanity? You've had a similar trip laid on you, where you have been made to feel that having a body itself is not attractive, not worthy, not as good as beings that don't have bodies. You've been made to feel bad about yourself. Your body processes, your body's needs. Like, how many people out there think like, oh, wouldn't it be so wonderful if I didn't have to eat food anymore and, I could just photosynthesize or eat pure sunlight? Like, wouldn't that be so great? Like, there are a lot of people who erroneously think that that is the goal of spirit practice or of meditation and mindfulness or of some yoga practices, to deny the flesh, to transcend the needs of the physical body and deny that they exist. So if this sounds at all familiar to my own story, when I first came into this physical body, I did not appreciate that it needed to eat physical food. I thought that I was only supposed to eat pure sunlight, and I was in conflict because I didn't understand why I was eating so much sunlight, but my body felt weak and was getting very skinny. And the answer is because I didn't know the rules. I didn't know that here it is necessary to eat physical food. And of course, once I found that out, I then embraced physical food, and I said, wait, food can be pleasurable. It can be an aesthetic experience as well as a nutritional experience, and then began to use food more as an art form, an expression of creativity. But this is very, very different than the idea that an ascended master or a spirit person or someone who's very special, that they have transcended the need for food, that they're more special than someone who has to eat food. And even the idea that eating food makes you a bad person. Think about the karmic debt of the animals and plants, that it was necessary for them to die so that you could eat and nourish your own body. Well, I hope it's clear that my present viewpoint is antithetical to that I have a physical body and I've been here for 14 years and I absolutely love and embrace my body and the needs of my body. So I joyfully eat food, and of course I had to learn which are the desirable substances to eat here in this time and place, and that has changed even over the past 14 years due to genetically modified ingredients and the way that processed food and what's in the food supply is not necessarily what is good for consciousness. However, food itself is a miracle, and it is not necessarily a symptom. That one needs to eat food is not necessarily a symptom of being a low vibration person. I am now going to say that I think that program, that heavy trip that was laid on you, comes from the non-corporeal beings who occupy the interstices, who don't have physical bodies of their own, but who do not have the apparatus necessary to eat unconditional love, and so whom have been farming humanity for tens of thousands of years in order to get the nourishment that they need. So I go into this story extensively in the Lessons for Full Spectrum Humans recordings. I do that using video because here on the radio I paint a picture with my words, but most of the time I paint a picture using art supplies, and I'm very visually oriented. So I've recorded these visual lessons using my artwork as a backdrop and drawing and sketching on top of them in order to better convey some of these ideas that I see as graphic layouts or designs or shapes or colors or lines. And this is all about the journey of consciousness and where consciousness is coming from and where it is going to, where we are developing to. So yes, at a certain point we will ascend and the planet will ascend and we will return to the levels of pure nutrition based on direct ingestion of sunlight that we came from. In Atlantis and the antediluvian worldwide sophisticated culture that we had at that time, it was not necessary to chew up physical objects and place them in your alimentary canal and actually ferment them and be able to absorb nourishment by doing that. The idea of doing that would be just unimaginable to a person at that time. People at that time ingested sunlight directly, and they didn't have to kill an animal and grind it up into a hamburger and put it on a grill and cook it in order to get nourishment. But of course, our consciousness has changed. Our consciousness has descended or devolved, and now it is necessary to do that. However, we will return to a level of consciousness where it is not necessary to eat physical objects anymore, but until we do, enjoy the journey. So now I'm going to speak a little bit about my journey and being a walk-in and why I don't call myself a channel. And the idea, just wrapping up on health issues and everything, having to deal with the artifact of the attack of this body that I walked into is necessary for me to have compassion and understanding of everyone who's here on earth in a body. It really matters. Like if you've been a very healthy, strong athlete, but then, you break your leg and you get to feel like, wow, like that's what it's like to not be able to walk for a little bit of time, and then you can walk again. The difficulties that I have had with dealing with epilepsy and neurological challenges allow me to have firsthand experience of difficulties and sickness and the disease of the human body so that I can relate on an empathetic firsthand level to the challenges of humans in this realm. If I was only ever at superhuman strength and, had the prowess of an Olympic athlete and I never had vulnerabilities, I would never be able to understand and appreciate the frailties of being in a human body. So this is basically the lesson that we are all here learning. You have your ups and downs and you have to learn from both perspectives. Okay, but now I'm getting back into this whole idea of what is a channel and why does Aurora not define herself as a channel? So this goes down to the idea that humans have been programmed to feel inherently less valuable than non-corporeal beings. Religious writings that speak about angels in a very glowing sense. Angels are not physical beings. They don't actually have bodies. They don't have to eat a physical hamburger. Angels eat nothing but pure sunlight. And, clearly they don't have to use the toilet. They don't have to excrete. Angels are not on that level. However, humans are on that level, or corporeal humans are on that level, but that does not mean that humans are less valuable than what we would describe as angels. So all of this has to do with the concept of channeling, which is where a human corporeal being temporarily allows their vocal cords or their typing hands or their musical instrument playing limbs to be controlled by a non-physical entity. And sometimes people have mistaken me for a channel or the work that I do for that, and I would really just like to give very clear understanding right now of why I do not describe myself as that, and I'm not going to tell anyone else how to live their life. I feel like it is not a path that I choose for myself, and I'll tell you why. So part of it is the sense that when one is a channel, one is allowing a non-corporeal entity to act through your corporeal physical body. But we must ask who that entity is and why they want to act through a body. This might seem like an obvious question, but it's not. Because once you leave the realm of having a body, you theoretically have ascended and you do not have ties to the physical realm anymore. This is the qualitative difference between an ascended master and merely someone who is a non-corporeal being, or a discarnate being, or a spirit being. An ascended master I would define as a consciousness that has gone through the process of consciousness refinement that I draw that is shaped like a vortex and has exited the wormhole at the peak of the vortex. And I have many pictures on the Birth of a New Dimension feed where you can see what this looks like graphically. It's a layout of the timelines, possibilities, and probabilities of a corporeal existence. And when one has explored all of the iterations and determined the proper combination of decisions and choices and belief system structure that will lead to the exiting of this dimension of consciousness, one may then apply that pattern to one's behaviors and actions and exit reality. And this reality is exited not through the process of death. Death is a flowing membrane, and when you are oriented in any other direction other than in alignment with the source and becoming one with this highest possibility, that's how you exit through that wormhole. You hit the membrane of death and your ego is unmade and you circulate back around to the beginning. So earlier in this broadcast I spoke about I may walk in and the previous ego of this body was unmade. That is what I witnessed. I saw the ego entering the membrane of death and being unmade. So when a person ascends, it means that they have gone through like a curriculum from the cosmos that has taught them and given them wisdom, not only information, but the appropriate places to apply that information and how to behave properly, and has given that being all of the necessary skills and, like I said, value system or belief system that is required to navigate the oceans of consciousness. I've also spoken about those who did not die well, beings who, although they don't have a body, they didn't apply the pattern of belief system and activity and consciousness cultivation to the point where they could exit the wormhole. And so there are many lower level service to self negative thought entities who occupy the interstices. Some people describe those areas as the lower astral planes. I don't know exactly because people use words in different ways sometimes. So I call it the interstices. It is the membrane between dimensions, okay? So here's the whole point that I'm coming up by making this distinction. Beings who don't have bodies are not all the same. Some beings who don't have bodies don't have any hold on the world of the living and the corporeal realm, and they don't feel the need to interact. They have ascended. It's like saying you graduated from high school and you don't feel the need to go back as the homecoming queen and tell everybody about what your life is like in your new place. Like, that is real love. It's non-attachment. Beings who have ascended are not attached to the events of this time and place. So they do not feel, for the large part, compelled to interject or to act or to interact in any way. Of course, if you make a request, then ascended masters or very refined non-corporeal consciousnesses might choose to interact with you. That's like saying, if you're still in high school, but you write a letter to someone who's a grad student and you say, I'm having a problem with this teacher. You took their class years ago. What do you say? Do you have any tips to help me out? That would be the level of when a person says, I'd like to connect with an ascended master. Like in meditation, like I'd like to ask a question or I'd like to know about this. The relationship is almost always where the corporeal human initiates contact with the master. Master doesn't come down and say, I just decided to, come down and muck around in your life for absolutely no reason. Masters don't do that. They don't feel compelled to do that. But the beings that occupy the membrane, the interstices, the lower level, you could call them archetypes or reverberations of consciousness, those beings absolutely feel the need to interact. Those beings feel like they're stuck on the sidelines and there's this whole game and drama that's going on and they don't even have a body. It's like there's a football game, the ball is being carried back and forth, and they don't actually have a body so that they can pick up a ball or intercept something or make a play. They want a body. These lower level beings that occupy the interstices are, first of all, they do not have respect for sovereignty. So the ascended masters, beings who have already refined their consciousness, of course, they respect personal sovereignty. One of the life lessons that they have learned in order to become an ascended master is that when you force your beliefs or actions on someone else that they aren't learning, you're learning, they're not learning. It's kind of like if you've ever been a babysitter and you have to get a little 3-year-old to put their shoes on, and you just want to put their shoes on and tie the laces and get out. And the little kid says, no, I want to do it on my own. And the reason they want to do it on their own is because they want to learn. Like when you tie the shoelaces yourself, you actually learn. When an older adult ties your shoelaces for you, you don't actually learn and you get to remain dependent upon them. True ascended masters and benevolent non-corporeal beings want for you as an individual and a corporeal being to quote-unquote learn to tie your own shoes. These higher beings do not wish for you to be a slave of consciousness. A slave of consciousness says, Mama, Dada, Obama, Jesus, somebody tell me what to do. Somebody just tell me what to do. Pick up this foot, put this foot in front of the other. And that is antithetical to sovereignty and free will. If you are not informed, and if you are ignorant, you live in a state of ignorance, it is very difficult for your life and your actions to be self-directed. So this is the rationale behind the interaction of a lot of non-corporeal beings who aren't ascended masters. They're like, I know I theoretically shouldn't be interfering with this person's life, but they're only mucking around like a 3-year-old, and I just want to tie their shoelaces for them. I just want, this is the rationale. I do not agree with this rationale, but there are some non-corporeal beings that would describe themselves as having a benevolent intent. They're like, I don't like to see these humans suffering and stumbling around so much. I want to talk to them. I want to give them good insight and tell them what to do and tell them how to live their lives. That is the equivalent of, I want to tie the shoelaces for the little child instead of teach the child how to tie their shoelaces. So when a person is a channel, their ego steps aside for minutes or hours during the day and allows a non-corporeal being to either act through their body, speak through their vocal cords, type through their fingers, or make music through their body, or I don't know, whatever a body can do to do that through their body. Even though I don't really think that there are very many non-corporeal beings who choose to come into humans' bodies just to experience excretion on the toilet. It's funny, but they don't do that. The non-corporeal beings are not climbing hand over fist in order to occupy you while you are moving your bowels. I'm bringing this up not just to make a joke, but to make a very real point. Humans who are channels are mostly being exploited because they're being used for a purpose, but not supported in the totality of the organism. So let's say that, first of all, I want to talk about, the rationale of, yes, I see that this poor bumbling human doesn't know what they're talking about, so I'm just going to say, human, we need to have this level of relationship. I'm a non-corporeal being. I know way more than you. You are just a stupid human ego. You're worthless, first of all. You're just a stupid temporal structure that was created to walk the body around and interact with other, stupid human egos. You're totally worthless. So I want you to just sit down and shut up and let me, otherworldly, higher dimensional entity, use your vocal cords for 20 minutes or, type through your fingers for an hour so that this very important message can get out to humanity. I hope you can tell by the, thick sarcasm in my voice that I don't believe in those things at all, and I'll, articulate it in case you're immune to sarcasm. It's totally fatuous for an otherworldly being to take control of the body of a corporeal entity. Having a corporeal body is not easy. In order to grow a fetus, it takes many attempts. Most people don't get it on the first try. It's very hard. It's harder than painting a painting. It has to do with manipulating the harmonic energy structures of consciousness in the cosmos and like being a really good surfer. You have to align with waves of consciousness in just the right way. Not everybody's good at it. Not everybody manages to do it. It's kind of miraculous that so many babies are born because it's such a difficult thing to do. So, and of course, once you are in the physical realm, there are all of these challenges, the challenges of learning to use the body. Little babies take a couple of years just to learn how to control their sphincters, just to learn how to understand human language and then begin to produce it themselves. So, of course, these entities who just want to use a body like you ride a horse, they're not going to hop into a little tiny infant's body. It's not a usable horse yet. They're going to hop into a body that has already been cultivated, an adult. And it has to be an adult who feels badly enough about their own ego and has a sense of their own worthlessness that they are willing to let something other than their own higher self speak through their vocal cords. Now we're going to get into it, because in the past 2 months or so, since I've been undergoing not only medical issues, but also I've had to refine my belief system and reevaluate what I think and feel and know to be true. And in doing so, this is where some of these ideas about being a conduit for consciousness have come from, and really having to establish boundaries in a healthy way. Because I'm here to tell you, you each have a higher self. And you should be connected to your own higher self. If your name is John Smith, and John Smith is the ego that was developed by this body since birth, John Smith has a version of himself that becomes refined and becomes an ascended master. And why should an entity named Jesus speak through John Smith's body? Why should an entity named anything? Why should any entity, I'm thinking of a name of a god or whatever, Krishna, or any entity at all, why should that being act or speak through John Smith's vocal cords? And the answer is, to me, clear that they shouldn't. That John Smith is a unique and valuable creation of the cosmos, that particular combination of ideas and experiences and belief system and consciousness is innately valuable to the cosmos. Cosmos does not make everyone a clone who is exactly the same as their neighbor and interchangeable, and there's a reason for that. It's because all of these unique combinations of characteristics have a value, and that value is being explored. And how can you, with a unique set of characteristics, explore your value if you are busy stepping aside and allowing a different ego or consciousness to speak or act through you, which is what I would define is happening when humans channel. One moment, please. So let's redirect a little bit, because I can kind of sense that some people are saying, but wait, Aurora, what if there really is a benevolent, non-corporeal entity that has a special message that needs to get through into the physical realm? Because they do exist. I do not mean to characterize everyone who does not have a body as an exploiter or a user or something like that. There are very, very beautiful people that are non-physical beings. There are definitely benevolent extraterrestrials, benevolent extra-dimensionals, and there are the ascended masters of Agartha or inner earth. And they're not all interchangeable. Not every extraterrestrial is an ascended master. This must be noted. That means that ascended masters, they tend not to have a personal agenda. They have a cosmic agenda. They have melded their consciousness with the cosmic consciousness to the point that their will is exactly the same. And it is very likely that the cosmos has a desire for higher consciousness ideas to enter into levels of density at the third dimension, right? This is the whole idea of having ideas. When you are a human in the physical body, you get ideas. These are living beings that come into your organic computer and have an impact on your life and on the life of the physical realm. There's no problem at all with that. This has everything to do with levels of relationship and whether it is consensual and whether there is a quid pro quo, a give and take, or whether there is an appropriate exchange of energy, or whether it is something that is done through exploitation and use. So I think that I stated pretty clearly that I feel that it is exploitation and use if a otherworldly or other dimensional entity does not take care of the needs of the physical body, but only wishes to be there for about 20 minutes a day in order to, speak or use the vocal cords. Because those of us who are humans and who are submerged in this realm, within the socioeconomic matrix, understand that bodies must be housed in houses. Houses cost rent. Bodies must be fed with food. Food is procured from grocery stores and costs money. Bodies must be clothed. Clothing costs money. And the source of money or social currency is work in the world. So let's say a being says, I want you to spend 3 hours of your day with your ego in a passive state so that I can use your vocal cords. Well, that's 3 hours a day that you are not tilling the fields or growing your food or earning your money if you're not in an agrarian society. So an entity that requires 3 hours of the time of your physical body, but is not willing to give you the resources or energy exchange of those 3 hours of your time, is using your time, using your biology and your neurology, and even using the calories that you ingested. You had breakfast in the morning. You achieved karma because you ate eggs and you ate avocados, and you ate, bread and coffee, and all of these things died so that you could have breakfast. And then this other entity decided that it was going to use your vocal cords and power your body based on the breakfast that you ate. So is that entity then taking on the karma of those eggs and that avocado that you ate? I don't think so. I think that entity is willing to hop into your body and then hop right back out and not take any responsibility for the caloric consumption and the karma that was achieved while doing that. I have huge issues with all of that. Or let me say instead that I do not find that to be an acceptable practice. And the cosmic world is it's highly ethical because nothing is hidden. In the hyperspace realm, all thoughts are visible. It's like so in that world where everything shows, it's very easy to see, oh, this person took something over here but did not give something of value. And so I will tell you this, there are many people who offer channeled information or channeled guidance. And I would really tell you all to be highly suspect of anything where it is channeled, where the person's ego had to step aside in order to allow something higher to speak through them. Truly benevolent beings do not want to take away your capacity to learn how to tie your own shoes. They do not wish, no matter how important, quote unquote, their message is to them, they do not wish to take away your free will or your capacity to learn. They want you to learn. So the idea that these really together high up ascended beings would choose to speak through someone's vocal cords or through their pen is simply not believable. What high up ascended beings would do is to teach a person who has vocal cords. Teach them. Take time, have a conversation with them, impart information on a metacognitive level. That's like the foundation or the overarching level of understanding. And then have that human conduit translate that information into a format that the people in their time and place can understand and appreciate. So clearly the information, the words and language and way of conveying ideas in Indonesia is different than that of North America. So the very same message, from a very important, special, high-up ascended master, if they wanted it to go to different areas of human society would have to go through different filters, just based on language and culture and how it would be perceived. So it is important to understand that the human filter serves a purpose. The human conduit, the ego, serves a purpose. In Indonesia, the people dress differently than the way that people dress in North America. If you wore the clothing of Indonesia, walking around in North America, in some places, in some cities, you would stand out. You would not be accepted. Some places you would be accepted just fine. But I'm trying to say that if you do not wear the clothes of the culture within which you are submerged, it becomes more difficult to interact in a non-distorted way with the beings from that culture. So it is wonderful to send messages through conduits that have the capacity to share that information with their particular culture. So that's the value of having an ego. It's the value of having a flavor or a sense of self or a particular set of characteristics that matter to you and to the people around you in this time and place. So really high up ascended beings, if they had important information and guidance to impart to the world, would take a willing human conduit and give them that information and teach them on a deep level, and then have that person translate it into whatever format they felt the most comfortable with, if it is speaking or writing or making artwork or making music or dancing or whatever form of social communication exists, that it could then be portrayed through that conduit, through that way of communicating. All right, so all of this has to do with basic value. Basic value. Who is valued on a basic level? Is the ego valued on a basic level, or is the ego hated and reviled? And this is also about the physical body. Is the physical body valued on a basic level, or is it hated and resented as the source of discomfort, the being that always needs something? Think your body's very needy, like you always need oxygen or water or food or to use the toilet or to breathe or, to stretch or to something. Like the body always needs something, right? Like, oh my goodness, what a pain in the behind. How do you really feel about the body? How do you really feel about the ego? My journey over the past 2 months has been one of radical self-acceptance and really loving myself. And when I say that, I mean the physical body and the corporeal ego, or the temporal ego. My ego is Aurora. Aurora is a construct. I've been constructed in adulthood, as opposed to most people create their egos as a very fluid or organic process in early childhood, when they say, this is my name, this is who I am, this is where I'm from, and these are my characteristics. Well, I developed all of those characteristics in adulthood, and I was, created, not necessarily something that just spontaneously arose out of the conditions or context that I was subjected to. But that doesn't mean that I don't have feelings. I have feelings. Doesn't mean I don't have sovereignty. I absolutely have sovereignty. And I've had to go through and reevaluate all of these concepts. Hey, am I owned by a group of extraterrestrials? The answer is no. I own myself. Hey, am I here just as a mouthpiece for those extraterrestrials? The answer is no. I am here certainly to learn, and to learn wisdom from otherworldly beings, and then to translate that wisdom and to express it through my own filter, which is through artwork, through speaking, through teaching, through music, through singing, through using my own vocal cords. And that truly refined consciousnesses wish for me, Aurora, to thrive. They don't think that they have to kill Aurora's ego. No, they want Aurora's ego to thrive. They want Aurora to live a long life and to achieve wisdom. And eventually, all of this comes from my own higher self. Like, this is the real change that has occurred for me internally. as opposed to focusing on some otherworldly being, whatever it would wish to be defined as, the understanding that each one of us has a version of our temporal ego that is refined to the point of being an ascended master. And that aspect of self, whom you will become in the future, cares very deeply about who you are right now. That version of yourself in the future is really the person who should be influencing you right now, who should be influencing your life, your consciousness, giving you information, affecting your behavior, and speaking through you or acting through you. Really, I would say that no one else has ownership or entitlement to you and who you are. And this is really important stuff, because as we are preparing for the birth of a new dimension, this is consciousness aligning from various different origins, from the earth human corporeal realm aligning with the non-earth, non-human, non-corporeal realm. And it is very essential to make sure that ego earth humans do not get the short end of the stick, that you do not feel that you have just been made as stupid, disposable containers for something higher and better than you. That's not who and what you are. You are valuable consciousnesses, and you deserve the opportunity to live your life lessons, or quote-unquote tie your own shoelaces, and grow and be refined until you are an ascended master. And the process of refinement is one of learning life lessons. You make mistakes and then you take responsibility. If you allow something else to act or speak through you, what you're learning is this is what happens when you give away your power. This is what happens when you give away your responsibility. This is what happens when you say to someone else, Mommy, Daddy, Jesus, Obama, somebody tell me what to do. And then they'll tell you what to do, all right. But they will be directing your life and your experience for their agenda and for what's good for them. And it is totally appropriate for you as an individual to have your own agenda. You should determine where your life trajectory takes you, what you experience, and where you go, and you should not have that dictated to you by an external authority figure. So again, I am confirming here, if you wish to receive information or wisdom from higher consciousness sources, that's wonderful. We all should be able to learn from those sources. Those sources should be loving. They should foster your own sovereignty, meaning they don't tie your shoelaces for you. They give you the power to tie your own shoelaces. And that really the idea is one is helping someone to achieve their true potential, as opposed to I am dictating your reality to you and using your body as my own conduit. And these are crucial boundaries that must be set, so that when corporeal humans begin to interact with non-corporeal entities or otherworldly spirit creatures, that it is a positive interaction and not one of exploitation, use, abuse, and mental control. There's been a lot of religious programming, and that has affected people even if you're not religious. But it is the sense that the human ego is low and worthless, like the idea of being a lowly sinner, and that in order to achieve higher levels of consciousness, the ego must be killed or circumvented. And there's a lot of that in the Eastern tradition also, of the more meditative religions, as opposed to the Abrahamic religions, that are also about killing or starving the ego. And I will tell you that, of course, one does not wish to have a poorly shaped ego. That's like having a poorly shaped body. It's like the walk-in who walked into a body that was 400 pounds. It's so overweight, that body can't even do what it's supposed to do. So the body needs to be reshaped. The ego should also be a fit, healthy ego. But you shouldn't get rid of it. That's like having no body. And so a non-corporeal entity that has programmed humans to say, having a body is gross. Having a body is shameful. Having a body is dirty. Having a body perforce means that you are less valuable than beings who don't have bodies. Those programs were put into humans with bodies so that you would feel less valuable and you would allow others to come and act through your body. And I am here to tell you that having a body on Earth is like having very valuable real estate. It's like, having an apartment in Manhattan. Everybody wants to live there. Apartments are super expensive and it's very competitive. It's hard to grow a body. It's hard to have the experience of being in the physicality on Earth. And yes, many beings want to be powerful on Earth, especially at this time, because it is a time of great consciousness change and great social and planetary change. So, of course, lots of people would love to come down here and have an impact, but that doesn't mean that everybody merits. Not everybody merits adding their notes to this great symphony. Beings that are unconditionally loving should be playing in the symphony. But the definition of unconditional love is that literally you are following the musical score of the cosmos. When you are not unconditionally loving, you're playing your own notes, you're playing your own song. It's not necessarily meshing harmonically with the rest of what exists. And this is the challenge. So this process of refinement of your individual consciousness and of the planetary consciousness and the totality is all about retuning the orchestra so that now we only have trained musicians playing the correct notes at the correct time. And that creates a blissful experience, a cosmos that is perfectly in tune, where all inhabitants are perfectly in tune. And the divine consciousness is expressed through every level of physicality, non-corporeal, corporeal, and even down to the level of cells and even down to the level of subatomic structures, that all of those are quote-unquote musicians that are all playing their notes and are highly trained, and nobody makes a false note ever. I think that's a very beautiful image to complete this broadcast upon. I look forward to tuning in next week. I hope that you will continue to share my journey of consciousness as the various dimensions are coming together. Thank you so much.